let's talk about one of history's most stunning economic collapses. We're going to dive into the story of Germany's Weimar Republic and figure out how a modern nation's money became completely, utterly worthless. To really get a handle on the chaos, let's just start right at the peak.
It's late 1923 in Germany, and the nation is caught in a whirlwind of hyperinflation. Imagine your entire life savings, carefully tucked away for a rainy day, suddenly not being enough to buy a single loaf of bread. It sounds like a bad dream, doesn't it? But for millions, it was a waking nightmare. People had to use wheelbarrows, yes, wheelbarrows, just to haul enough cash to buy a few potatoes. Workers would get paid twice a day, rushing to spend their wages at lunch before the money became worthless by dinner time. The elderly, who had worked their whole lives, saw their pensions evaporate into thin air. Families, desperate to stay warm, started burning stacks of banknotes because the paper money was actually cheaper than fire. It wasn't just money that was lost, it was hope. Dignity and trust is scarred on a generation that would never truly heal.
This wasn't some weird theory. This was the actual reality on the streets of Germany. And this number? 4 trillion German paper marks. Well, that was the exchange rate in November of 1923. To get just one single US dollar. So you have to ask, how on earth does this happen? How does the currency of an advanced industrial nation just vanish into thin air? Well, to understand the explosion, we've got to rewind the clock and find the spark that lit the whole thing on fire. First, back in 1914, Germany decided to go all in on the war. They funded the whole thing by borrowing money. But they're lost. That left the new government, the Weimar Republic, holding the bag on a massive 156 billion mark debt. And then came the knockout blow, the Treaty of Versailles, which piled on billions more in war reparations. So you've got this massive pile of debt, but how did that transform from just regular, bad inflation into something the world had almost never seen before? How did it go hyper?
Germany just lost a massive war. The Treaty of Versailles slaps them with huge reparation payments. A debt so big it feels impossible to pay. The country is already broke from the war. And now they have to cough up billions to the countries they fought against. This set the stage for one of the most extreme economic disasters in history. By 1921, things started to get weird. The German government needed foreign currency, like dollars or pounds, to make its reparation payments. But they didn't have enough. So they started printing more of their own money, the mark, to buy foreign cash. This created a vicious cycle. People saw the government printing money like crazy and lost all faith in the mark. They rushed to exchange their marks for any foreign currency they could get, at any price. This panic selling caused the mark's value to plummet. What cost 1 mark yesterday might cost 10 marks today. Then, in January 1923, things went from bad to worse. When Germany couldn't make a payment, French and Belgian troops marched in and occupied the Ruhr, Germany's industrial heartland. Think of it as seizing the country's main factory. In response, the German government called for passive resistance. They told all the workers in the Ruhr to go on a nationwide strike and stop producing anything. No coal, no steel, nothing. The goal was to make the occupation economically useless for France and Belgium. But here's the crucial mistake. How do you pay millions of striking workers when your main industrial region isn't making any money? The government's solution was simple and catastrophic. Just print more money. They fired up printing presses and ran them non-stop to pay the salaries of the striking workers. This was like pouring gasoline on a fire. The amount of money in circulation exploded, but the amount of goods to buy remained the same. The result was a complete and total collapse of the currency. By late 1923, the situation was absurd. Prices were doubling every few days. A loaf of bread that cost 250 marks in January cost 200 billion marks by November. People were paid twice a day, rushing to the store with wheelbarrows full of cash before their wages became worthless. Life savings were wiped out overnight. It wasn't until a new currency, the Rentenmark, was introduced.
It was backed by a mortgage on all of the land and all of the industrial property in the entire country. It was as much a psychological move as it was an economic one. It restored faith because it connected the money to something real and tangible. It brought what many Germans called the miracle. One day, a single US dollar costs 4.2 trillion marks. The next, after the government basically just chopped 12 zeros off the end of the currency, it's worth 4.2 of the new Rentenmarks. The exchange rate stabilized. But here's the thing. Fixing the currency doesn't automatically fix society. You can't just erase an economic trauma this big. The hyperinflation was over, but it left a deep, permanent scar on Germany, on its people, its politics, and its future.